Crash. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now it looks like the deep state, the economy is doing. This is an illusion. It's funny how Fitch and all these rating agencies and all the financial pundits and the National Association of Realtors, they can't understand what is going on here because in their heads the economy is doing well and they think everything is great and they can't explain why people aren't shopping in retail, why aren't people purchasing homes, everyone has a job, so why are the delinquencies rising? It all doesn't make any sense. This is what happens when an illusion breaks down. And again, as interest rates continually move up, things are going to break, and that is what we are seeing right now. Now we can see that there's been a lot of talk about trade with China, especially with the ZTE phones, and we talked about that with Q in previous reports. And it looks like Steve Mnuchin was in charge of going out and, haggling with China. And I think he was put into this position on purpose. Trump is testing him, wants to see what he does, and it looks like that he's going against what Trump really wants. Because we need to remember the ZTE phone, according to Q, is used for other reasons. And right now, Trump is saying, listen, we want a change in management. There's going to be heavy fines. And Mnuchin is really on the other side right now, trying to mend everything, trying to say, no, everything is fine. And it looks like Mnuchin eventually might be the next individual to go. We saw it happen with many people within his administration, and I think Mnuchin, who's a Goldman Sachs boy, I think he was put into place because in the beginning phase of Trump coming into office, this was someone he had to accept, and I think now as he's taking more and more control, he doesn't have to accept these individuals anymore. He can clean house, and I think this is the next move. The same thing is going to happen with Nikki Haley. It's going to happen with many others because these are all leftovers. These are individuals that were put into place by the deep state, those who were in control at the time.
Now, hopefully everybody's paying attention to where we are at right now. Here's the score. As of last week, the Federal Reserve lost their accreditation. They lost their accreditation, and that has now placed what is being done into a proverbial slingshot where once they lose the accreditation, they have to move to a certain level of substantiation. And when they move towards a level of substantiation, you have to keep in mind that all of these things that are being done, these are tactics that trust entities use to protect their assets. If their business dealings become unprofitable, all right, now I want to lay out the scope here. The Federal Reserve lends money to the banks who have failed their stress tests under Basel III, which has federal depository insurance over the assets that are in the various different accounts which were established by account holders. So it's an asset that isn't really being ledgered properly as far as those that are established, because under Black's law, the word established means to create. So the very individuals that created the accounts, there's an insurance component that's an asset to those that are monetizing that part of the ledger. But when the business becomes too risky, first you lose accreditation, which then puts the insurance in jeopardy. When the entity that actually is insured loses accreditation, the insurance becomes more expensive. If the insurance becomes more expensive, they have to reduce the amount of coverage that they're covering those established accounts. And it would not surprise me, that since the dollar is actually being priced out at 3 cents on the dollar, that they're reducing the insurance coverage in these accounts before the actual bank runs start. If they can stay in front of this narrative, then they will keep a certain class of people into these institutions that are losing accreditation and lowering their insurance rates. So those in the marketplace, in the private sector, as of today, since the announcement from last week, have become very busy in the private sector. And this is causing some global things to happen. I'm going to show you what I mean. What you don't know, because most of us don't really pay attention to these things, is that if an asset becomes a liability, there is something that the institution can do to preserve and protect themselves in commerce. And because they can do